like to call the meeting to order of the Camarillo Planning Commission, regular meeting this day, Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. If Secretary would call the roll, please.
Commissioner Talmadge.
Present.
Commissioner Murphy.
Here.
Commissioner Edsel.
Here.
Vice Chair Vandermeulen. Here. Chairman Espinoza.
Here. Now, if Commissioner Murphy would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, could everyone please rise, face the flag, and put your hands over your hearts? Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next item is the consent item, which is the minutes of our meeting of February 1st. If there are no corrections, questions, if we can have a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Talmadge, seconded by Vice Chair Vandermeulen. So let's please vote. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, this is now the public comment period. This is the period where any member of the public, by the way, I want to welcome everyone here. It's good to see an audience. It's been quite 2 years, a lot of Zoom meetings, and so we appreciate the attendance and engagement. So this is the period for anybody who wants to address anything that's not on the regular agenda for tonight. So any matter pertaining to anything not on tonight's agenda. Were there any cards or requests? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period. And we'll move on to the agenda item, public hearing. This will be for Commercial Plan Development, CPD 6M23, Central Plaza Sphere Investments, LLC, to adopt resolutions approving final MMD 2020-7 and CPD 6M23 and approve a parking reduction of 4%. If we can have a staff report, please.
Thank you, Chairman Espinoza. Our Principal Planner, Jackie Lee, will be giving the staff report.
Good evening, Chairman Espinoza and members of the Planning Commission. The project before you tonight is located at the Central Plaza Shopping Center, which is 700 and 960 Arneal Road. It is at the northeast corner of Arneal and Ponderosa, and it is just south of Fiesta Drive. The property is designated commercial in the general plan, and it is zoned commercial plan development. The request for your consideration involves the demolition of the former 111,850 square foot Kmart building, the construction of a new 63,642 square foot Vons supermarket, a new 3,000 square foot convenience store and gas station, a new 3,500 square foot drive-through building, and a new 3,500 square foot retail building. Overall, the net reduction, this would result in a net reduction of approximately 36,000 square feet of retail square footage in the shopping center. The project also is to remodel the entire building facades of the existing buildings within the shopping center. And the applicant is also requesting a 4% reduction in the parking requirement. And these are some slides or photos of the existing center. And so this is the existing building where Subway is and Baskin Robbins. And this is the Vons building and CVS and Coffee Bean and this former Kmart. And to provide background on this application, this shopping center was originally approved by the Planning Commission in 1969. A modification to the shopping center was approved by the Planning Commission in 2015 for the construction of a 5,000 square foot single-tenant office building, which was anticipated to be a bank, and that entitlement has since expired. The applicant requested a general plan amendment for a mixed-use project on 4 acres of the shopping center, and that was referred by the council for further study in 2017. However, the council rescinded that referral in 2018. In June of 2020, the applicant submitted the proposed modification to the shopping center, which is the application for you tonight. And this is the site plan that shows the proposed modifications to the shopping center. And where my pointer is over here on the northeasterly part of the development is where the new Vaughn's building is proposed to be constructed. And in its place is proposed to be just retail commercial tenants that may end up dividing that space into smaller spaces. And CVS would stay here on the corner. The project proposes a new gas station convenience store, and these are the fuel pumps and the proposed convenience store, and that is a proposed Vaughn's fuel station, which would be tied to the Vaughn's supermarket. And over here is the existing Coffee Bean, and that's proposed to get a facelift, and that's also shows a new outdoor patio area. And there's a new drive-through building that's being proposed out here. And this is an existing building where Agave Maria's is currently located here, and this is the patio. And this is Baskin Robbins and Subway. These 2 buildings would also remain, but they would also get major facade remodel to bring the whole center up to date. And right here at the corner is a new building that would be added onto the corner, and this is currently vacant, so that would be developed with a new end building with a parking lot. And this area here, it's a little hard to see here, but I'll discuss it a little bit later in the presentation, is where the applicant is proposing to have several art features displayed. And this will be a nice activated paseo kind of hangout area for people to dine and just kind of hang out with a fountain, some low seating areas, some artwork displayed on the wall, some ambient lighting. So this would be a nice activated corner to just kind of activate the shopping center. So all the proposed uses in this shopping center, they have been reviewed, and they would comply with all the requirements in the commercial plan development zone. All the proposed uses are permitted within the CPD zone, and the project complies with all development standards such as setbacks, landscaping, and loading. However, the applicant is requesting a minor reduction of 4% in the required number of parking spaces. The center would require 835, and with the 4% parking reduction, it would require 802. And the site plan shows that the center would provide a total of 804 parking spaces. Okay. And these next few slides are some slides that show the proposed facade remodel and building elevations. The proposed building heights would be no more than 35 feet, which is in compliance with the maximum building height of 35 feet in the commercial plan development zone. And this is the west elevation of the new Vaughn's grocery store, and you kind of have to look at this going from left to right, and then it kind of continues here, and then it continues down to here, which would be CVS. So this is the main facade that you would see from the parking lot. And this is the shops building at the corner. And this is the remodel of the existing building where Agave Maria's is located. And this is the existing and new proposed building at the corner. And we worked really close with the applicant and their architect to come up with architecture that significantly enhances this shopping center and brings it more current and up to date. There's many features such as tower elements, archways and trellises, tile and stone that are being introduced into the architecture that's really going to bring this shopping center up to date. And this is the pad building that's proposed, the new proposed drive-through building. And this is the building that currently houses the Coffee Bean. And this is the proposed convenience mini mart and fuel station. And as I mentioned, that the project does include several art installations. And this one is a feature at the corner. And this is what they call Camarillo Breezes sculpture, which is about a 16 to 18 foot tall stainless steel sculpture. The applicant will be giving you a little bit more information on this artwork. But that is what's proposed right at that corner of Arneal, Ponderosa. And along the wall are the stainless steel painted leaves, which should be applied to this wall. There's also public art that is going to be featured on this kind of feature wall that will have seating alongside of it. And for people who are hanging out, they'll be able to enjoy these new metal plaque features. And this is a sample of something similar to what it would look like. And basically, it's a wood block that is used to create these metal plaques. These three images on the bottom are just inspiration for what these metal plaques would feature, which are some historic sites and vistas within Camarillo. And altogether, this new corner area with the public art and the fountain, lighting and seating areas, that's going to create a nice gathering space for people to enjoy. And the project is proposed to be constructed in phases. And there is a condition of approval in which the applicant would be required to submit a phasing plan, which would need to be approved by both Public Works and Community Development Director. And the first phase would consist of this corner area out here to just activate this area and these shop buildings. And then the next phase would be the Vaughn's building. And then the third phase would be pretty much the remainder, of the shopping center. And at this point, I'm going to have our city traffic engineer come to the podium. Jason Samonte will give an overview on traffic and circulation.
Thank you, Commissioners, Planning Commission. So just to review what's going to happen with the access situation at the site. Currently, there are 5 driveways on Ponderosa Drive. One of them will be closed, the one closest to the intersection of Arneal and Ponderosa. There are existing 5 driveways on Arneal as well, and the 2 closest to Ponderosa will be closed, leaving 3. And then currently there are 2 driveways on Fiesta Drive. The one closest to Arneal Road will be relocated closer to the proposed building here, the new bonds. Overall, the development is going to experience a reduction in traffic generation, so the traffic impacts should be minimal here. I am here to answer any questions if you have any concerns about or questions about the development.
Do we have any questions for traffic engineer at this time? Vice Chair.
When you say that it'll generate less traffic, but yet you're looking at a drive-through that might possibly drive through constantly, and you're adding some additional space, even though you're taking out a little bit, but what you're taking out seems to be changed to something else. How do you calculate that it'll be less traffic?
Vice Chair Van Reelen, the traffic generation is based on what each proposed business will generate. So the existing or approved site plan does show a gas station, existing gas station here at the corner of Ponderosa and Arneal. So moving it here, well, it'll have more pumps, but the traffic generation will be similar to what was approved and was there previously. The drive-through, this may generate additional traffic, but overall, the square footage that's being reduced here from the former Kmart site will more than compensate for that.
One of my main questions I have, and I don't know if it's for you or for the developer, as far as the whole parking layout and the drive-through restaurant, and especially the effect that it'll have on parking for the Baskin-Robbins, which is about the only family-friendly facility in the whole parking lot. The way I see it now, the only parking, they would be walking and have to park, chances are, walk across the drive-through traffic coming through for the drive around,
So you're
whatever.
right here.
Yeah,
walking
and
across.
I don't think it
Actually,
leaves
I'm sorry, it's here.
enough safe parking for the patrons that use Baskin-Robbins with their families. So I don't know who that question goes to, but
Let me make sure I understand what your concern is. You're expressing concern for families, especially little children who have to park here and walk to the ice cream store here.
correct.
Okay. I mean, the expectation is that there should be slow traffic in this drive aisle, as well as sufficient traffic breaks between vehicles that it should be safe enough for pedestrians to cross. This is a standard layout. We have it at our other shopping centers throughout the city, such as Carmen Plaza, Las Posas Plaza.
Okay. It just seems like right now, because they can park right across from the doors of 31 Flavors.
Yes.
Without any major traffic drive-through really to worry about going. So that was a concern. On the other side of the parking spaces that you just showed, to the ones to the drive,
Yes.
are those parking places that are supposed to back out to that main drive through the parking lot?
Are we talking about these parkings? Yes.
So anybody that parks there will have to be very careful of all the traffic going back and forth.
Yes, and there are speed bumps along this drive aisle.
Okay.
I had a
Commissioner.
question along the same line. Can you show the traffic pattern for that drive-through? Where do they come in and exit on the way it's drawn there now? Where would the cars come in to?
Well, let's say, for instance, if I was shopping at Baskin Robbins, there is a drive aisle. There should be one right here.
Where it currently is.
I'm sorry, my vision's not so good. That almost looks like landscaping, but I'm going to assume that's a driveway. So drive up here, then I would park somewhere along here, walk to Baskin Robbins, and when I exit, depending on which direction I wanted to go, most likely I would exit here on Ponderosa Drive so that I could head westbound on Ponderosa.
But I'm talking about if people are going to go to the drive-through, whatever food place that is, where do they enter that and go through the queue to get their food? Is that figured out yet or no?
I have not seen a layout for this. At this point, my understanding is this is just a proposal. So I would have to defer to the developer or the architect.
Yeah, because I think that'll be important to see the flow of that, or is that something that takes place during plan check?
Well, from what I'm seeing, it looks like there's an entrance here and an entrance here, and there appears to be a drive aisle going back around here. And
And where would you exit? Does that come straight out onto the street there?
no, there's no driveway there, so, yeah, I would have to defer that to the developer.
Maybe.
Yeah, we can reserve a question of that nature maybe when we have the public comment, the developer comes up.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Commissioner Edsel?
I have
Commissioner
one
Ray?
question. So, right, smaller business area, less traffic generated. Is that part of the reason for the 4% reduction ask?
No, the reason, you're talking about the parking demand, correct?
Correct.
So the reason we allow for a 4% reduction is what they call bypass traffic. So oftentimes drivers will actually come into an area, oh, what did I do? Oh, sorry, okay. Oftentimes drivers will come into an area and, for instance, they'll come in here, they'll pick up their dry cleaning, and then, it's a pass-by trip. Then they'll go to the grocery store and buy something, or they'll go get coffee. So it's not just one trip coming to the shopping center. It's actually one vehicle trying to accomplish multiple objectives or trips. And so we allow for a 4% reduction in the traffic or the parking demand, just to account for that. It's called pass-by trips.
I see. That's basically, the pass-by meaning that you would use more than one building per each trip.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Just to kind of tag on to that a little bit more, so that's one of the justifications to allow the parking reduction. So that's typically at the director level, but since the permit's moving forward, we'll bring it up to the commission as part of the approval. The other side of that is that there's also a building code requirement that requires shading of the parking field. It's a newer requirement. Just went in, I think, a year or 2 years ago. So they had to install a lot of extra trees to provide that shade cover. I think the tune of 250 trees, and the irrigation and all that stuff. So that kind of also limited the number of parking that they could provide on the site. But on the other side, it enhances the site. The aesthetics of the site too, and will provide the cooling and satisfy the state building code. So there's two justifications for the reduction, the parking
All right.
reduction to 4%.
Little less pavement, little more shade.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks.
Commissioner Thomas, do you have questions for the traffic engineer this time?
Oh, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Not on traffic.
Okay, I do have a traffic question myself. One of the things I noted that having been to the shopping center multiple times, is the challenge of coming out the main entryway off of Farneel and shooting across through the center divider to make a left turn to go south on Arneel. And I noticed that during the comment period of the MMD, there was some concerns raised about that same issue. So there was further review, and as far as that aspect was concerned, by the consultant, Stantec, and I understand that they were concluding that the level of service at that intersection with the proposed project would create delays of over 90 seconds at that location, and recommended a traffic signal at that location for improving the flow at that location and for the safety factor. So I wanted to know if you could address the fact that that's not a recommendation at this time, but it was in the report as a level of service that had and they also recommended a mitigated step by putting the signal would bring it up to level B. If you can maybe address that.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Espinoza. So just to review, the discussion is the main drive aisle. Where am I?
Yes.
Which is right here.
Right.
There was, during the scoping period for the project, the consultant had the suggestion that we should do a traffic study here to see if it warrants installation of a traffic signal. So they did that, and based on full build-out, what they came out with was that some drivers could possibly experience a delay of 90 seconds to pull out of onto Arneel and make a left turn to go south. So that's where the delay was. That, based on that 90-second delay, that resulted in level of service F. However, one thing that it doesn't take into account is that drivers who wish to go either south on Arneel or west on Ponderosa could easily exit onto Ponderosa Drive and then either make their way into the left turn, one of the two left turn pockets going southbound on Arneel, or just continue west on Ponderosa. The city, or I concluded that the a traffic signal at this location, it can't be warranted, or it can't be justified just on one warrant. We do have 9 warrants for traffic signal control, and usually it's a combination of traffic volumes and traffic safety. So I did a analysis of the traffic collision history on Arneel Road over the past 3 years. We did have a couple of collisions at this driveway, 2 in a 3-year period. But that's not really, it doesn't indicate a collision pattern that would be correctable by a traffic signal.
Yeah, so I think that, we'll move on to the remainder of the report, but just to finish up with this particular item, I was really wanted to know if we needed to actually be concerned about the fact that they were, the consultant was saying through the traffic study that it was considered a level F, and we were saying we try and mitigate so that we get it to a level C or better. Is that something that we have to achieve and attain in this instance for a project of this nature?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
The level of service for Arneel Road will be A. And that's the primary concern of the city. Level of service for traffic exiting from the development will be severely impacted when at future build-out, at full occupancy and future build-out. But the fact is, drivers do have an option. They don't necessarily have to exit out of this main drive aisle. There are other driveways that they can utilize.
Okay, I understand. Well, thank you for your input. Okay, any further questions for the traffic engineer at this time? Okay, if we want to proceed with the...
Yeah, thank you very
report.
much.
Thank you very much.
So we do have the city's consultant Laura Kaufman of Envicom Corporation, and she's here tonight to discuss the environmental review for the project.
Good evening, everyone. Hard to talk with these masks on. Envicom Corporation, or Envicom, we were contracted by the city to prepare the initial study pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, which is nicknamed CEQA, the acronym. Envicom evaluated all of the 21 topics and the component questions on the initial study checklist, provided a thorough analysis of each, and we provided significance conclusions based on each of these questions and determined whether mitigation measures were warranted based on those. Our finding, evaluating all the issues, were that with mitigation measures, no significant unavoidable impacts would occur. So in other words, wherever there was a significant impact, there was a way to mitigate it, and the mitigation measure is included in the MND. So with that conclusion, an ISMND is the correct and appropriate CEQA document. The city reviewed and revised our document. We worked closely with the city in getting it ready for public circulation. The public circulation period was 20 days in accordance with CEQA. The dates are here, September 3rd through September 24th. We received 9 comments on the document addressing various issues. Transportation, which we just heard quite a bit about. Topics were, safety, access, particularly that middle driveway that was just talked about. And we provided responses similar to what you just heard. Hazardous materials, compliance is required, and with regulations, and there are some mitigation measures which are on the next slide. Questions were asked about that. Water supply and wells were asked about. And just note that there's a actual net reduction of square footage in the proposal when you compare it to the existing conditions. So, CEQA impacts are evaluating what you're going to do compared to what's already there. So it's that net difference. So because it went down, a lot of the impacts just really weren't there. Asbestos and lead was a concern, so that was discussed, and a little bit was discussed about noise from the fast food speakers. They are 160 feet from the residential property line, so that was discussed in our responses. And then, and no significant impacts to the nearest sensitive receptor. And then for light and glare, we commented that we responded that the lights would be focused to avoid spillover effects onto neighboring properties. So these responses were incorporated into the final ISMND, and we made some clarifications in the final EIR regarding those points that were just discussed. And the final ISMND confirmed again that with mitigation measures, no significant impacts would occur. Just to summarize the mitigation measures here, you can see by topic. For air quality, asbestos removals required during demolition and renovation activities. That's sort of a standard, very prescribed and regulated activity, but we noted it in the final ISMND that must occur. Biological resources, because you might have nesting birds, there is a federal Migratory Bird Treaty Act that requires that we take care, so there's a mitigation measure for that, very standard. Cultural resources, we have suggested monitoring, the MND includes monitoring for inadvertent discovery of archaeological resources or human remains. And similarly, the geology and soils section also requires the same for paleontological resources. So basically what it meant, these studies that were done for archaeology and for geology, or paleo specifically, we did not expect that we would find something, but just because there could be, or there might have been some findings in the nearby area, in good measure, recommend that some discovery protocols there. And then on hazardous and hazardous material, again, a lot of work was done prior, phase 1s and phase 2s, on the site. But the recommendation is to continue to do a little additional checking, additional testing prior to development, and also for removal of lead and asbestos to occur. So these are mitigation measures to ensure that the impacts will remain less than significant. And for approving the ISM&D, Jackie, I don't know if you want to speak to this or if I should continue.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
So an M&D shall be adopted by a decision-making body if there's no substantial evidence in light of the whole record that the proposed project may have a significant adverse effect on the environment. The ISM&D contained potentially significant impacts which will be mitigated to less than significant level with implementation of mitigation measures. And based on that information and in light of the whole record, there's no substantial evidence that the proposed project may have a significant adverse effect on the environment. So the recommended action would be to approve the M&D and adopt the resolution.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura. So I'll just kind of conclude here with our recommendation, and just to summarize that staff had worked very closely with the applicant on the design, and we believe that this project would be an overall enhancement to the shopping center and to the community. And it will remove the underutilized vacant Kmart space and bring in a new Vaughn's grocery store. And it will also incorporate the vacant lot at the corner and invigorate that space with a new area for people to dine and hang out and to enjoy. So in conclusion, staff's recommendation to the Planning Commission is to adopt a resolution approving MND 2020-7, and to adopt a resolution approving Commercial Plan Development 6 Modification number 23, subject to the recommended conditions of approval. And that concludes staff's presentation, and we're available for any questions. And after your questions, and once the public hearing is open, the applicant also has a presentation that they'd like to share with the commission, and they're also going to be available for any questions.
Thank you very much for that report. Now, commissioners, questions for staff. Commissioner Talmadge.
Yes, I have a number of questions. I'm going to start first with the mitigated negative declaration. And Ms. Kaufman, it was very nice to see you here tonight. Thank you. But I have some questions. There was exhaustive evidence in the MND about previous wells and testing of wells on the site. And they had to do with, well, some old-time things. But I'm wondering, first off, is there any evidence that on this property there were wells that were drilled for the previous agricultural use before anything was built? Do you have any, did you find anything?
We could look through the environmental site assessment that we have at the back of the document. It's
Yeah, I did look at
1,700 and some pages. But Jessica Hitchcock, who's here also with Envicom Corporation, and I can take a look and see if we can get you an answer on that. I don't know for certain, but we can check.
Right. I know that, of course, most of Camarillo was a farm at some time, somewhere, and lots of wells were drilled at different times for different reasons, some for oil, some for water, who knows. And I'm just wondering if there was any likelihood of some ancient well, ancient being maybe the last 100, 150 years, that are on this particular property that may pose any kind of issue. I'm not aware of one, but I'm just asking the question.
I don't think that came up as a general concern, but we can certainly look into it, and maybe the applicant has some information as well. But generally, there would be protocol. You know, if something like that is discovered during grading, there are actions that need to be taken.
Right.
So it's monitored.
Yeah. And I noted also that the wells that were found, there's good evidence that they were properly sealed and whatnot. And on the corner of, well, it's Ponderosa and Arneal, there used to be a gas station. Were those tanks actually removed, or are they still in place?
Again, I'd have to probably look at that, but that, there were multiple subsurface.
Someone in the back is nodding their head.
Oh, what's that?
Yes, I believe those were removed, and the applicant is very familiar with the history on the underground storage tanks, so
Okay.
that we could defer to the applicant on that.
And there was no evidence of any contamination of the soil or leakage to groundwater, is that correct?
There was some remediation that did occur, and that the county did issue a notice of that had been cleaned up.
Okay, it has been remediated.
Yes.
Okay, all right. You indicated in your presentation there was a net reduction in water use because of the reduction in square footage. However, the plan, as shown, has a lot more landscaping than what's existing. So it seems to me that there's additional water use for landscaping that may be negated. I don't know what the trade-off is. Did you have any kind of a water analysis done of use, or did you just look at building square footage?
The applicant probably could speak to that. However, the new landscaping that would be installed would all have to be drought tolerant to comply with the state and city's irrigation requirements. And the existing shopping center has quite a lot of grass turf that would be replaced with more drought tolerant landscaping. So that would be a savings in the water usage that's needed for the irrigation.
Okay. Yeah, I get sensitive about the water calculations, as you probably know. And it seems to me, just intuitively, that there's more water going to be used on the site than what was done previously or what exists today. I'm also have a question about, you indicated that there were a couple of businesses that operated before. There was a dry cleaner, there was an auto repair facility in Kmart, and some other things. You also have a number of restaurants there that have grease traps and disposal to the sanitary sewer, or could contribute to groundwater contamination. And I think that's been addressed, but I need your assurance that it is addressed as one of the mitigation measures that you have in the MND. Maybe that's a complex question, I'm not sure. Let's go first with the contaminated soils. That's covered under your, okay. What about things like grease traps and other discharges to the sanitary sewer?
We could have our city's city engineer talk about the requirements pertaining to our sanitation district facilities.
It may be covered as part of Public Works review for the NPDES permit process and whatnot.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Talia Tucker, City Engineer. So we have, I'm hearing both sanitary sewer and stormwater. One is covered by the Camarillo Sanitary District, and we do have conditions of approval in there ensuring that they do comply with the conditions covering standards for construction. Any types of restaurants would have to meet our FOG requirements, fats, oils, grease, have the interceptors and monitoring wells, and be able to make sure that they're in compliance for any kind of food services like the drive-through.
Okay.
And then on stormwater, there are also actually probably 3 times as many conditions for the stormwater pollution protection. So they do have quite a lot of areas on their site where they are treating water, It's, because it's a redevelopment, they do not have space to put a large, like, detention, retention, and those kind of basins that you might see on another project. So in this case, they have it under the parking lot, where they'll be treating some of the stormwater.
So you are going to have a catch basin, if you may, a containment, a tank or something for the stormwater runoff, and that catches your first flush, and then it discharges to the storm sewer. Is that?
Correct. So it's
Okay.
below the parking lot that they have these, exactly where it'll catch the first flush and be treated there. So they have quite a large area, actually, in their
Well,
in their
there is.
parking lots. Their current preliminary design does show that.
Okay, so are you satisfied with the proposed, is the existing parking lot going to be torn up and repaved, or is it pretty much going to stay as is and maybe cut in certain areas?
There'll be one portion, I don't know if you want to put the picture back up. So wherever they are changing what I'm going to call the line and grade, or like how it slopes right now to catch basins and things, they're going to be ripping up, like in this area, they'll be changing the drainage.
Right.
To get to, there's a mainline storm drain that comes right down, it's existing to the watershed line here.
Okay,
And so where they have to, well, of course, where the building was, but to redesign it and make sure that they address drainage and get the proper slopes, and then to get to their stormwater BMPs that we were just talking about, they will have to change the grades. So they'll be ripping up the parking lot. So in the phases that Jackie went over earlier, in those areas where they are redoing pavement for construction and changing the grades, they will have to repave. For areas where, let's say, they're not changing the line and grade, but they do have to go in and put in some new trenching for sewer, water, utilities. If anything that they are disturbing and destroying the existing pavement, we're going to be looking for them to, of course, put in the proper backfill and then pave it.
Okay.
So for the most part, most of their phases will be repaving. It appears that at the end, they'll even be probably repaving in here, because of course you can see a lot of these nice features before you go into the stores. And it looks, from the looks of the plan, what I'm seeing is in this area, they may not have to repave. If they can get in there, they're not really changing the line and grade. They're going to be putting in some little planters that just sit right down on the existing, slopes, and to put in the trees.
Okay.
So from what I see, that is the area. There may be a small area near Coffee Bean, but for the most part, once they get on construction, depending on how the end design of the plans turn out, they may be ripping up more of the parking lot than currently is planned. So just from the looks of it, in this area would probably be and maybe a small portion back here, would be the areas that probably don't have to be repaved.
okay.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it does, thank you. Somewhat related, are you aware of any existing problems with drainage on the site? Ponding, puddling, things like that?
No.
Okay. All right. What about runoff from the building roofs? Is that taken care of?
Yeah, that will be taken into consideration. They'll have roof drains that come down and be treated and enter into the storm drain system along with all the other rainfall.
Okay. I have some more questions of staff. I've moved off the MND.
Yeah, you can proceed if you have more questions,
You wanna
staff.
finish the MND?
Yeah.
Or you wanna-
Well, if you have,
Keep going, huh?
yeah, if you have additional questions for staff,
All right.
yes.
There was a reference in the staff report to vine pockets on the Northeast Drive, 14 parking stalls, what would be on the eastern side of the site. What's a vine pocket?
It's a very small planter finger that truly just is enough for the roots of a vine, and maybe you've driven by a place where you see a gorgeous plant that somehow attaches itself to a wall, and when you really look to
Oh, so is there a wall there?
where you look to where that plant is coming out, it's a very small area, just so small, just enough for the root, just enough for the
Okay.
for the
All right.
trunk.
'Cause
And
it's
then, and then it grasps onto whether it's a wall or.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
So on the, I guess the figure that we're looking at, it's the lower left corner. That's the vine pocket, right there? Or is it up there?
I'm hearing, okay, so north, what were you saying, north, what, east?
North
Here?
is to the left.
Do we have the elevations maybe we can look at?
And it said the north and east side.
Northeast.
Yeah. Is that it against the
Along
building?
this wall, perhaps? I
Well,
mean,
it made reference to next to 14 parking stalls, and I didn't know where to start counting.
Oh, on this wall?
Oh, okay.
So,
That's
yeah,
a
so when
vine
When you
pocket.
drive back here, right now, there's like an existing drainage,
Yeah.
little curb gutter ditch, very small,
Right.
that's concrete.
No, I just
So-
hadn't heard the term vine pocket, and I didn't know
Yeah,
what that
so it's
was.
just so again, it's just, there's not a lot of room to get a lot of planter fingers, and so they're probably going to cut in, which is nice. It's just because it's a little vine pocket, it doesn't take as much space as some of these larger planter
Okay.
fingers, and yet what comes out is a vine that just really covers the wall.
Got
It
it.
looks real nice.
Right. Thank you. One of the things that was mentioned briefly in the staff report, but I think is important to recognize, is some of the history of this particular site and projects and things that have happened in the past. What we see today is what was approved in 1969 and with some minor modifications. And then we had another proposal that came forward, in the, I guess, the early teens of this century. And it talked about a new small building on the corner of Arneal and Ponderosa where the gas station used to be, yes. And that was going to be, I don't know, some kind of a bank or something. And that has since gone by the wayside. And what is proposed there now, I think, is a wonderful addition with, the public art and some other things. But one of the questions that comes up is, why have we not included a residential component to this project? And I guess that question came up in the past, and there was, I guess, a pretty significant public outcry against residential. And I'm wondering if you could, either staff or otherwise, enlighten us a little bit on some of that history, because it's certainly not part of the project now, but there are people that have said, oh, we need more housing. Well, okay, but is this the right place for housing? And, as a second story to something. And I think we need to spend just a few minutes and just talking about that history so that we can understand why we're here today looking at this instead of something else.
Sure, I can speak to that. In 2017, the city council did refer a request for a general plan amendment to change 4 acres of this shopping center to commercial mixed use, which would be this area right here where the new Vons and parking lot is proposed to go. And we only had seen a concept plan at that time, and the concept plan showed a mixed-use building that would kind of wrap around, front onto Arneal, and then kind of wrap around easterly, and that had ground floor commercial with 2 stories of residential above, and then in the back of the property was apartments. That proposal was met with opposition from the community. The general plan amendment referral was rescinded the following year. So there's no referral authorizing a general plan use redesignation of this to include residential at this time. And what they're proposing is all within the parameters of the existing zoning. And what the uses that are being proposed are all uses that are currently permitted in the current CPD zone.
Thank you. I think that background is important to understand, and I think it also says a lot for the developer to be responsive to the needs of the community and desires of the community. And I think, well, certainly we have a demolition of a large building and a reconstruction of a building for, a grocery store, okay. But in essence, this is really a big facelift for the overall project, which I think it certainly needs it, and I think this is very responsive to that. The last question I have of staff at this point, you indicated that there's 3 phases of work. The first phase is the lower right-hand corner, if you may. What's kind of powder blue or something. And then second phase is the yellow, and third phase is the green. I guess that's green. Whatever. Anyway, is the demolition of the Kmart building going to happen the same time as phase 1, or are they going to do phase 1 and then start the demolition?
We can ask the applicant to expand on that, on their construction
Maybe when
phasing.
you said the applicant is going to give us a presentation.
Yes. Mhm.
Maybe if they can propose or at least mention how they're going to do that, because my immediate concern is if you take that whole yellow area and tear it up and the blue area, there isn't a whole lot of parking left for anybody else. So I'd just like to hear kind of a discussion of how you intend to phase the work so it makes sense, that it keeps, because as I understand it, the existing tenants in the buildings are going to stay there throughout all this work. And we need to make sure that we have, a way for them to continue their business. So if the applicant can address that in their comments, I would appreciate that. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
So Commissioner Talmadge, I'd like just to kind of, if I may, touch a little bit more on the water use and water demand question
Yes.
that you had. So we have a conditional approval number 63 that addresses that. So prior to grading and prior to the city issuing a water will serve letter, the developer will need to conduct that study. It's called a water supply study, and submit that to the city to offset any difference
Okay.
of use.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes, thank you, Chair Espinosa. Just really an observation about, we were talking about the pavement a little bit earlier, and looking at the preliminary grading plan, it's as Tally mentioned, it's that yellow area and then extends out into what would be the phase 3 area. It's about maybe a quarter or 1/3 of the site, and looking at the solid waste component of the MND, that is considered to be, that pavement removal would go to a solid waste facility, and just a general comment, there may be an opportunity there to recycle that pavement in place, and that would even improve the MND figures, although the MND found that item to be less than significant anyway. So just a general observation on that. Questions-wise, not a whole lot. I think I read that there will be bicycle racks, and I was wondering where those are located on the site. And the Vons, can we have a comparison of the existing Vons square footage size versus the proposed Vons square footage? Would be helpful.
To answer your question about the bike racks, yes, there is conditions that they would have to install new bike racks, and those would be located throughout the center so that they're evenly dispersed. And the exact locations of those would be determined at the time that they provide their landscape plans, which is typically when we see the final location for those. So that would be subject to review. And as far as the size of the Kmart building, I'm sorry, you said the existing Vaughn's supermarket. I don't have that right in front of me, but the new supermarket would be 63,642 square feet. And the applicant probably could answer your question as to how large the existing Vaughn's is. But let's see, yeah, but it looks like this shop's 1B, which is 38,761. Yeah, so I'm getting a nod that, yes, it's 38,761.
Yeah, I see that, and that's basically the existing bonds.
Yes.
Yeah, so it'd be a significant upgrade in size. Great, thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner Murphy? Commissioner Edsel?
No, I think I'm ready to hear from the applicant. Some questions to him, maybe.
Okay. One quick question for staff. I wanted to ask, on the phasing plan itself, that's something that still has to be formally reviewed and approved by the director at this time? It hasn't yet reached that part.
That's correct.
Okay.
They would have to put together a final phasing plan that would be reviewed and approved by the city engineer and director of community development. But we have just seen a conceptual plan at this point, but a final phasing on how the construction would occur to make sure that it's done in a safe manner, that's still going to be subject to review, and there is a condition of approval that requires that.
Okay, and so is this typically reviewed after project approval?
Correct.
And it's not something that comes in to have the commission weigh in on it?
It's a
I
condition
asked
of
that just because
approval.
of the environmental impact concerns in construction and existing businesses and so forth.
The MND analyzes the total project and the impacts as a result of the entire project, and the phasing plan is more for just the phasing on the construction because, just for logistical purposes, it would be difficult to keep the shopping center up and running with construction happening all at the same time. So it is planned to be phased accordingly.
Okay.
And the applicant, I know, is going to speak a little bit on that and how they plan to accommodate the tenants during that time.
Okay.
And the condition number is 165, and subject to the community development director's approval.
Okay, thank you. So the last question I have for staff, I wanted to ask about the M&D circulation period and so forth. If the questions I was raising earlier regarding the traffic study by the consultant, had there been a revision, in other words, from where they were recommending something that wasn't originally there before, but they recommended after, and there needed to be a revision, say they decided to, the traffic engineer concurred with that conclusion, that they needed to have a traffic light. Would that have required a recirculation of the MMD, or could that have been something that could be added without having to go through that process?
The installation of a traffic signal?
Yeah, if the traffic engineer had concluded and concurred with the study recommending that as a mitigation effort for the traffic flow and the level of service.
The traffic signal, the project without the traffic signal did not result in any environmental impacts associated with the project without having a traffic signal. The traffic signal would not change any of the conclusions of the mitigated negative declaration.
Okay, yeah, because it wasn't actually identified as anything to be mitigated in.
Correct. It was not a mitigation
In the
measure.
MMD, but had that been something that came up, I just wanted to know if that was something that would require, and there was some sort of concurrence that it needed to change, would that require recirculation of the MMD, or is that something that could be added as an add-on? Just because I do, and I looked at the report, which seems to have some sound reasoning in terms of the benefit, which may even be a business benefit, to have a signal there where people would maybe come in, or be more inclined to come into the center than they would otherwise, and so forth. So there's a safety consideration, there's a recommendation by a consultant saying this would be a beneficial thing for these reasons, safety reasons, traffic flow reasons. So I just would want to know if that was something that was, reconsidered.
The level of
For
service
the
at that
entrance.
driveway is
Yeah.
not an environmental impact issue.
Mm-hmm.
So level of service is not evaluated anymore under CEQA.
Mm-hmm.
So that was not identified as an environmental impact in the MND. So the MND did not include any mitigation measure for there to be a traffic signal there.
Right, it did not. That's correct. But I thought that the revision, was there not a revision to the, like Appendix K of the MND?
There was.
To make that conclusion by the consultant, because they added that in there right after.
There was some additional analysis to look at that.
Right.
At that driveway, and that did not change the conclusion in the MND that there were any environmental issues that were discovered as a result of that additional traffic analysis.
Okay, yeah. So I guess I'm just sort of confused as to, it seemed like there was if they took a second look at it after thinking that, well, maybe it's being raised as an issue by the public. So we need to take a second look at this entryway, this main entryway to the shopping center. And is it adequate? And they took a look at it, and the consultant in the report says, yes, this is what really should be done. This is what we recommend. This is how we recommend you fix that problem, which is that's there in the report, but it's not actually in the MMD as a mitigated measure necessary.
That's correct. I think for clarification, if I may, is that for purposes of CEQA, when analyzing traffic, the criteria is no longer allows us to use level of service. So if there's a delay at an intersection or level of service reduction due to a project, that is no longer allowed under CEQA for us to use, to analyze under CEQA, but instead it's vehicle miles traveled. So under the SB 743, that changed how we look at traffic impacts. So under CEQA, we only look at traffic impacts in terms of level of vehicles miles traveled, or VMT, and there was no significant issues associated with that. There were no issues associated with emergency access or the ability for emergency vehicles to enter the site, or safety with vehicular circulation associated with the project. However, the cities, as conditions of approval, does have the ability to impose certain conditions to make improvements if there is justification for that, to help alleviate any impacts a project may have that are associated with congestion or level of service. So it's no longer evaluated under CEQA, but more as a development impact associated with the project, that under the conditions of approval, should that be the wishes of the city, could look at imposing certain conditions if that is something that you believe is, that needs to
Warranted.
be addressed.
Right.
Would be through the conditions of approval for the development.
Right, okay, yes, that's helpful, because I just really think that, I'd rather address it now than see the project be approved. Later on, we find out, well, because this service station is now quite popular, and most people want to come get their gas here, whatever the case may be, or it's drawing a lot of attention, it's a great project, people want to come here, they want to enjoy the plaza, they want to get their gas there, but all of a sudden, we've got a problem here with this entry point that wasn't addressed, so that's why I'm trying to address it here.
Yeah, the appropriate way that the city would address that would be through the conditions of approval on looking at perhaps conditioning that, certain studies be done, which is very typical on projects, to evaluate, how the circulation system is functioning after the project's been built.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
Chairman Espinoza, I'd like to have the city engineer, or traffic engineer, kind of address or discuss if a traffic signal was installed there, and kind of like the impacts that it may have on the circulation of traffic to the existing.
okay, great, thank you. Yes,
Yes. Chair Espinoza, so just to recap, under CEQA, we can't evaluate the impacts based on level of service, but the city still has standards that we can impose on a development outside of CEQA. And one of them would be, like installation of a traffic signal. Now, we would have to evaluate, for instance, the impacts this would have on traffic on Arneal Road. Ideally, you want a spacing between signals of about a quarter mile or at least 1,000 feet. So in this instance, we're talking about a distance of probably about 500 feet between the main driveway and Ponderosa on Arneal. And it's been done before. The distance between Ponderosa and Pickwick is about
Right.
500 feet.
right,
So, we can time the signals, but it's not ideal to have them so closely spaced together.
right. And I think the consultant did even make that recommendation, didn't they, about synchronizing the lights between that entry point and Ponderosa in that fashion,
Right.
to try and keep the southbound flow going, right?
Right.
No.
The issue is that there isn't enough spacing for traffic to queue if there's a red light. So that can create congestion issues. It could potentially block the existing driveways for people trying to get out of the shopping center.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have for, you have another question?
Yeah, just to tag on to that then, when the project's completely done, built out, the tenants are in, will the city take another look at the traffic and what's going on with it? I know currently, a couple times I've tried to exit that main road onto Arneal, or the main outlet onto Arneal, at the wrong time in the busy traffic. And I've ended up having to turn right, and then unfortunately I go to the left into a neighborhood and turn around and, come back out again. And they're not fully occupied at this time, but that was just the traffic time of day. So at the build-out, will the city look at the traffic again and see what needs to be done, if it needs to be done? If it needs to have some correction either at Fiesta or some way that we can make some other ways to turn safely out of the shopping center?
Yes, Vice Chair Van der Meulen, that is something that we do typically, or we have typically done in the past. When we have a master plan development, the traffic signal may not necessarily be warranted at the beginning, but as the development goes in phases, then traffic studies are revisited, and based on the level of service or the impacts to the intersection, there may reach a point when a traffic signal is warranted. And in those instances, what we do is we have the developer bond against them.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
One more.
Okay.
While we're on this
Commissioner
topic, was an additional lane for the right turn movement onto Arneal concerted in either the original traffic study or the revised traffic study? Either an additional right lane or a free right?
At the main driveway?
Yes. So exiting the shopping center, it looks like there's a shared left and right lane there, and I think that the concern, or one of the concerns, was a stacking up of the vehicles waiting to turn left. So had it been considered to add a right turn movement for those that only wish to turn right?
Commissioner Murphy, I don't recall if that was studied, but it is a good suggestion. Addition of a right turn only lane onto, from the main driveway onto Arneal.
Okay. Is that something that we can somehow add to the conditions, or suggest adding to the conditions to conduct a study to add that additional right lane? It seems like that would improve the traffic movement from the overall center. And looking at the geometry, it doesn't look like it would be too big of a alteration.
You'd have to widen.
I wanted to ask, is there a way we can address this and get through the process tonight by requesting some type of, further study of this particular point here? I hear Commissioner Murphy's suggestion on the right and the left turn lane idea, although I'm not sure whether that creates an obstructed view problem for somebody turning left if there's somebody to their right, because what they're watching out for is southbound traffic on Arneal and a center island they're dealing with, and a sign and a hedge and everything else. So I'm not sure that we wouldn't still have a safety issue without a signal, So I'm just thinking, if this is something that we could incorporate, as Commissioner Murphy is suggesting, as a condition in a way so that it doesn't get dropped.
Well, I guess defer to our traffic engineer, maybe Mr. Svante can talk about the warrants that would justify, or the 9 warrants that we'd kind of look at to justify the traffic signal. They didn't meet all of them to require it, so I don't know if we'd have the authority to impose a traffic signal on this project. And then I just kind of want to understand Commissioner Murphy's question a little bit more. So what you're suggesting is an acceleration lane coming out of the...
No, so you're exiting the center, and you're either going to turn left or right onto Arneal. Those turning left would be the vehicles that would probably be stacking up because they have to wait for more traffic flow to come through and to safely make that movement. So what I'm suggesting is adding a right turn lane or a free right to that throat, to that entry throat, so that right turn traffic does not have to wait behind the left turn stacking.
If I can try to address that. I think, Commissioner Murphy, when we review the design, that can be incorporated. It could be a requirement. The width of the driveway would have to be evaluated to make sure that we can fit 3 lanes, 1 lane inbound and 2 outbound. If not, then it would require modification to the driveway widening and also the landscaping.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's correct. I can't see how wide it is right now. It looks like it's only 2 lanes. But what I really want to kind of touch on is there are other options for exiting the site. Fiesta, Ponderosa. So if there is a backup there, I mean, I would, see that and exit to, Fiesta Drive and then make my right turning movement. So there are other options. If we go and start looking at, we're going to have added an additional lane, we're going to have to, it's going to change the project. And it's going to change the landscaping. We're going to have to widen it. They're going to have to look at their drainage again. So it would, be a
Significant.
modification to that. But what I want to point out, though, there's still 3, exits on our Neal. So there are other options, and then also on Fiesta and Ponderosa to exit the property. So I think that would be the more appropriate alternative for a vehicle that's looking to exit the property.
And Commissioners, just to add to the Assistant Director's comments, we do have a project right now which is currently proposed, reviewed, supported by studies to add or change certain designs or elements, as the Assistant Director mentioned, may have to change and significantly affect the project itself. So if that's going to be the preference of the Commission, we may have to bring this item back, evaluate those suggested changes, and further evaluate before we could present it back to the Commission.
Okay, understood.
Just verify, on the exits onto O'Neill, there are still 2 exits I'm looking at, correct? That you can turn right on O'Neill from?
That's correct. There's 2 additional driveways that are, well, there are 3 driveways total, but the other 2 outside of the main driveway are right turn.
Only
in.
right turn?
Right turn out only, yes.
Right. So they wouldn't have to go all the way up to Fiesta?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, any other questions at this time? Okay, with that, thank you very much for your comments. With that, we will go ahead and open the public comment period, and if we could have the applicant, if you'd like to address the commission at this time.
Good evening, Commissioner Espinoza, members of the Planning Commission. Thanks for taking the time to look at the Central Plaza project. I'm Greg Parker with Investec. We've owned this shopping center since 1996. We also own another shopping center in Camarillo Town Center, I think you're familiar with, since 1997. We are pleased to show you tonight the renovation of the Central Plaza project. And I want to thank staff for its thorough analysis, working with staff over the last couple of years. We think it's a really good project, and we really appreciate the presentation. Central Plaza has long needed an update. I think you saw some pictures earlier. This is what it looks like. It's been outdated since, hasn't really had substantial remodel, except for a little bit when Bonds expanded maybe 20 years ago, since it was approved in 1969. We started this project back in 2017, so 5 years ago. And we did look, we knew that Kmart then was in rough shape. We looked at adding a residential component on the north side, essentially that 4-acre area that Jackie showed you. And we received significant, I'd say, lack of enthusiasm or opposition from the neighbors. And so we took that into account, and we decided not to proceed with that proposed residential aspect of it. We went and instead cast about and found a new, Vons was interested in expanding their shopping center by about 25,000 square feet, making it a preeminent grocery shopping destination in the area. So we decided to listen to the community. The community also asked us to provide some inspiring architecture. They were a little bored with the center, frankly, so were we. We agreed. And
We at one time, we looked at a gas station on the Fiesta corner, and the community was opposed to that, so we moved the gas station to the center of the site. We added quite a bit of outdoor seating and opportunities for public engagement that the community requested as well. I think we had 4 in-person meetings in 2017 and 2018. We were more limited in 2020 and 21. And we had 3 Zoom meetings that were widely advertised, and they were, had the community have an opportunity for input there. Here's our project proposal. I think staff already presented it very well. We do have the new buildings. We think that that southwest corner will be a material benefit to the community. And I wanted to emphasize the reduction in the square footage. The square footage is going down about, if you include the former bank building that was approved for the corner, which we let go during this process, the square footage is going down about 41,000 square feet. So that's the equivalent of taking a store that's bigger than that Vons and pulling it out of the shopping center. It really is a material reduction. I don't know you see that kind of reduction of square footage in a development process here in the city before. We are doing it because we think it's the right thing to do for the community and the right thing to do in response to the neighbor comments. So I'd like to have our architect, David Anderson and Adele Architects, come up and discuss a little bit about the architecture. And then we'll have Peter Tyus of Studio Channel Islands talk a little bit about the public art, and then I'll come back and talk about public benefits and be able to answer your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is David Anderson. I'm with Nadell Architects, and the primary goal here is to take a 1969 shopping center that's very tired and sad and make a village out of it. And that was kind of our approach. And you can see this particular view that we're looking at right now. This is just, it will just illustrate kind of the benefit, visual benefit that we're going to immediately see by removing that Kmart building, and which is all you see now in Fiesta is just a blank wall with a very thin strip of planting there. The building will be pulled much further back from the street. You're going to have a much more generous landscape buffer along that edge. So that whole side is softened. The landscaping is much more enhanced, but the approach for, and I don't know if I'm going to do this right. Did I do that right? Yeah, and Jackie's already done a very good job of kind of explaining the architecture and the approach, but the goal here was to create a village effect by breaking down the massing of these long kind of monotonous overhangs that were that was the style of the architecture back then. So in essence, we're pulling off those canopies that in front of the shops, breaking up the massing, and introducing, there's a pointer here, pulling off the canopy, because right now there's that long, low canopy that just continues along the entirety of that shop building area. So we're pulling out in strategic locations where we'll be taking it back to the existing building wall, creating a new sense of covering with some trellises, and in some places we'll be recreating a different massing type with a canopy and some awnings. And it's kind of a kit of parts that we're introducing along the entirety of the project that creates interest and differences in massing, but keeps it as a unified kind of, quote, village look. So that's our approach. Obviously, we are conforming with the city's design standards and creating kind of a more modern take on the Spanish approach that the city dictates. And I think that we've had a great working relationship with Jackie and her team and everyone, and so that's how we approach the architecture.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Peter Tyus. I'm the Executive Director over at Studio Channel Islands. Is somebody, am I doing the? Okay. So the public art proposal under consideration today has been inspired by the agricultural character and the cultural diversity of the city. There are 2 artists in the program. The first is Joe Adams. His creative vision was to represent the agricultural heritage of our community through a dynamic sculpture emphasizing the natural elements of leaves and seasons, specifically the fruit crops most commonly farmed in this area, strawberries, lime, lemon, and avocado. There are 2 elements to Joe's work. The first is the large sculpture, which we've seen in the designs, which is formed from 2 leaf shapes which rise from the ground at the corner of Ponderosa and Arneal. The surface of each leaf will be pierced with small leaf shapes, which will allow the light to cascade through, creating warm shapes on the texture underneath. The second part of the work is the large outsized leaf shapes that are going to be along the wall, which create this sense of movement and flow, suggesting the swirling breezes that have blown these leaves along the streets and are reminiscent of the Santa Ana breezes, whether or not we like the Santa Ana breezes. The second artist is Molly Doctorow. Her creative vision was to depict the natural beauty and the cultural heritage of our community through a series of 10 relief plaques, 5 depicting historic vistas of the city, and 5 depicting the natural beauty of our environment. The historic scenes have been selected to express the diversity of our cultural heritage, with images of Old Town Camarillo, specifically the Mary Magdalene Church Tower, Adolfo Camarillo Ranch House, and the bell tower over at Cal State Channel Islands, which includes in the background the Round Mountain, which is of particular importance to the Chumash people. The botanic scenes are an invitation to our community to explore the many hiking trails in our community and to learn about the native plants and the complex ecology of our environment. Overall, the creative vision of both artists is to create site-specific work which resonates with our community, inspires them to explore the natural assets of their home, and reinforces a sense of collective identity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So coming to the project benefits, what does the city of Camarillo get out of this? Well, the city of Camarillo, we were able to partner with Vons. We're going to have a brand new state-of-the-art grocery store. And it's going to incorporate the latest and greatest. They're working through their plans and how they really serve the community best in a post-COVID environment, which involves quite a bit of changes to the way they were serving. There's going to be improved landscaping. You saw on the setback from Fiesta Drive, you saw the significantly increased landscaping throughout the shopping center, including all those green pockets which allow for infiltration of water. We're vastly improving the architecture. We're planting well over 250 new trees to create shade and reduce some of the heat massing that's present there. We're creating quite a bit of outdoor seating. We've talked, I'm not sure, whoops. Not sure, there's a pointer. We have quite a bit here, which we really tried to engage the community, not only the seating for this new building here, but these stores, Agave Maria, the former Mathnasium space, and others will have shopping store entries that are on the back side that actually activate this area even more. We'll also have a little bit of outdoor seating here at the Vons to serve their deli service. And we're also going to have some significantly increased property taxes billed for the city, as well as sales taxes. We're excited about the project. We haven't been proud of this center. We were handcuffed a little bit by Kmart, lasting a very long time, longer than we thought, and then we had to rethink everything after listening to the community back in 2017, 2018. Our whole project team is here to answer questions. I've heard a few questions for me. I'm happy to answer those next, but that really concludes my presentation.
Yes, thank you. We can go ahead and have open for questions from applicants.
I had a couple questions. They talked about the phasing, but do you have an idea of the timing from start to finish the whole project?
Yes. If the approval happens now or soon, the first phase will be through the end of 2022. And Jackie, I don't know if you can show that phasing slide. That might be helpful for these. We had a few questions on phasing. The primary consideration for phasing is to keep the businesses open. And so our first phase is to do the facade renovation. We've got a decent amount of vacancy down, down here at the southwest corner. And so our first phase is we're going to do the facade work here, and then we're going to take some tenants that are up here and move them down here. And the reason we have to do that is the back wall of this building has to be replaced for structural purposes, because right now it's tied into the Kmart building. And so, and the Kmart building, when it is demolished, we also take down half of the former Round Table Pizza space in that corner. And so so the phasing plan is first, let's get this up to the new standard with the facade remodel. We move the tenants that want to stay here from this area out to here. We then replace the back wall of this building, and we probably will not release the most of that building until the until the new Vons building is done. And the simple reason is it's going to be a construction zone. It's going to be noisy over there. The second phase is once we abate the asbestos and the lead-based paint, which you heard about in the M&D report, this building will come down, which also includes a little part of this building. And then we'll build a new shop building. We'll build a new market building. That will occur in 2023. Our hope is to deliver it to Vons in early 2024. At that time, Vons will move from here to here, and we will do the work out here to prepare a pad. Vons is actually going to build this fuel station and convenience store, so we're just going to lease it to them as a pad. We'll do the facade remodel for Coffee Bean. We don't have a tenant here yet, primarily because we can't commit to a delivery date yet. Tenants that have expressed interest include Coffee Bean, because drive-through coffee is a big thing these days. The juice companies, and of course there's always the fast food option, but we don't know which tenant will be there yet. When Vons vacates here, that's when we'll do all the tree work in its parking field. And so that's generally the phasing approach, and the idea is keep the tenants open that want to, keep them sheltered from the construction while we can, and continue an active shopping center.
You had one more question on the Vons. I guess I was surprised when I saw that's their gas station. Are they doing that in other places, or are there any around here where they've done that, or is that a whole new concept for Vons?
No, it's not a new concept. They do it whenever they have the opportunity. They feel it drives business. They have a discount at the gas pump if you're a Vons preferred customer. There's one of those in Santa Barbara. We built one in Long Beach for Vons back in 2006. So they've been doing it for a while when they can. Usually you see it in new development, new shopping centers, which you don't see much up here. This just happened to be the opportunity. The only reason that area was available was because we're taking down 40,000 square feet of building.
And then, so I guess you mentioned before too, the gas station originally considering at the corner, but you moved it more into the center of the project.
At one point when we were looking at a mixed use up here, we looked at the gas station here. Gas stations always prefer corners. The neighboring residents, a number of them thought it was better located in the middle. We moved it to the middle.
Great, thank you.
Question for the applicant? Vice Chair?
So is the gas station a break it or make it deal with Vons? Or is that an absolute have-to-have?
They have a lease for it. If the planning commission doesn't approve it, then they don't have the lease. The lease, it's a condition of approval for the lease, is that it be approved by the planning commission.
Okay.
Is it, but if I'm hearing the question right, if the gas station is not approved, the market will still go forward.
Oh, okay, that's what I wondered. The issue, well, one, I'm familiar with the grocery store gas stations from over in Phoenix.
Right.
And I really enjoy the pricing that they have on, but they're always on busy streets. They're not close in residential neighborhoods. They're on like 3-lane, 6-lane roads and near a traffic signal, and not in this type of a situation that's a neighborhood situation. And the other question I had, although I know it goes against, I guess, what the neighborhoods wanted, was that, to me, having it that close to Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf with their patio and stuff, you're having people sitting outside close to the gas fumes. So when I was just looking at it, without thinking of, well, also thinking of the neighborhoods, but not as much, I would have moved it over and then put another restaurant in there where the gas station is. That would be maybe a mid-size, family-oriented restaurant, which we're lacking in this area.
Right. So layers of questions there. The first is, it's probably better located here than it was at the corner of
Correct.
Ponderosa
Very much
and
so.
Arneal. And
Yes.
so that was, what do you call a really long fell ball that lasted about 40 years, that was approved in 69, but finally we're done with that. I can understand why the residents didn't want it there. If it's going to be in the shopping center, this seemed to be the best place for it. The second layer question, the distance to the patio, with the vapor recovery systems and whatnot, there's not a lot of off-gassing and smells that go 20 or 30 feet away from a gas station. So I don't know that there would be, at least we haven't identified any environmental impacts that would be from that proximity to the patio. On the family restaurant, that's a really good point, and we're doing what we can to encourage that. We heard of that a lot from the neighbors. We need places where families can go and eat and enjoy themselves. So we've got Agave Maria's here, and we have Lucerne from here is going to move over here.
Oh, good.
And we're talking to, we've got the Yamasushi space here. We have a large nail group here, and we've got a brand-new building here. And the idea is that will be a restaurant area with different, we don't have tenants for them yet.
Okay.
The idea is we will lease those to people who are interested in having, serving the community and being a family restaurant.
Okay. Yeah, because there just isn't. And that kind of ties into with my parking issue in front of 31 Flavors with the drive-through restaurant, whereas if it was maybe a standalone restaurant that could be moved over a little bit, allow more parking spaces in there to serve whatever goes in there, plus the other buildings over to the side, that if you put in a couple more restaurants, especially one on the back side, then you're going to have more traffic and parking in those areas too.
Right, so we've got the parking would be here, 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 which faces, this group of buildings.
Okay.
We've got parking around here, which would serve primarily this building. And then we've got all the parking that's the furthest from the grocery and the CVS, that is simply across the drive aisle like they do now to go to Agave Maria's. Most of the Yamasushi parking out here when they were here, and most of the Agave Maria's parking's over here. And so we're adding quite a bit of parking in here. We are absorbing some parking with this new pad, you're right about that. And there will be some the parking along here, which will be, because this is facing, again, out towards this driveway as opposed to inward towards the drive-through restaurant. That will be largely people just crossing that driveway, which is exactly what they do now.
Yeah. I want to be protective of 31 Flavors.
Right. Well,
The families,
listen.
plus all the residents from Leisure Village, the seniors that go there just to get their treats, so.
Right, and we love that tenant. We want to keep them, and we want to keep them happy. And we think with the new facade and the new, this pedestrian walkway is going to load this entire area, and it's going to be, right now it's a back alley that's not
Right.
nice at all.
Correct.
We're going to separate that from the loading. And right through here, we're going to create a pass-through that will, hopefully, everyone who's using these restaurants that's parking out in this area will be walking by Baskin Robbins on the way home and hopefully have a good idea.
I just want to make sure that if they're parking in that area, they can walk safely.
Right.
Without the drive-through traffic that will be coming through there and in and out.
Yeah, so the drive-through traffic question came up earlier. The pattern is they would come in here or come in here. It goes this way and it exits here. And so if they're going, so it exits here. If they're going out here, they go right. So a good part of them will go that way. If they want to go up here and out, they would come up along this drive aisle and go out. But it's a narrow drive aisle. It's
is.
something that people have been crossing for a long time. We haven't had any problems with it.
Okay. And I would prefer, it would be nice if Coffee, Tea, and Leaf does stay or doesn't get competition to where they have to move out somewhere, but,
We would like them to stay, and we've talked to them about taking over the drive-through. They have a coffee exclusive in the center right now. And
Okay.
So unless they were to give that up, with the exception of the Vaughn's supermarket has a Starbucks in it. But unless the Coffee Bean were to give up their lease, and we've had them close in 2 other properties we own, so they changed their modus of operandi. We'd love them to be here.
so if they have a coffee lease, then you couldn't take a Starbucks in there.
As long as the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf is here, they have a coffee exclusive on the center.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Commissioner Talmadge.
Following up on the last point, in looking at the third phase area, the little driveway where there's parking and then the Baskin Robbins. Yeah, is there actually a cut in Arneal Road where you can turn in right there?
Yes.
Okay. It wasn't clear on that drawing, but it is on this one, so I wasn't sure.
I think it's a right out and a right in.
Okay.
You can't turn left in there.
All right, okay.
And Commissioner Talmadge, you had some earlier questions about water wells.
Yes, I did.
So we've owned the center for a long time, and it's been, had quite a bit of monitoring wells there. We've never seen a water well, a historic agricultural water well there.
Okay.
Or any remnants of them. The contamination that did emanate from here created a plume that was fairly large, and it was substantially remediated over a course of about 20 years and finally got closure, I think, in 2013.
Okay. It was in situ treatment.
It was, they pumped it out. They had gas product floating.
Enough they could
groundwater.
actually pump it.
They actually did both groundwater pumping and cleansing.
Okay.
And they did a soil vapor cleansing. They did remove the tanks originally back in, I think, the late 90s. And then when this lease ended in 2012, I think, the new tanks that were put in 20 years previous, so after the leaky tanks were removed and the soil was removed, the new tanks were removed and the Unocal took down its building and the soil was all clean then.
Okay. All right. Let's see. You've already addressed some of my questions, but I think you touched pretty much on what happens to the existing tenants, and I guess to some degree, some will move into, you'll finish phase 1 and then you'll have a move of some people.
Yes.
Great, okay. And then you touched a little bit on perhaps some new tenants, but, that's your business, not mine, so. And you've addressed time for work and phasing, and the use of public art, and especially the development of that little non-alleyway now into something that people can use, I think is a great enhancement for that one corner. It does a lot, because when you drive by it now, you just see an old vacant lot and the side of 2 buildings, and it's ugly, so, okay. And I appreciate your comment on some of the previous attempts of developing the overall project. and how we came as recent as 2016, 17, 18 with a very different plan than what we see today, and that you were very responsive to the public comments that were provided and the direction from the city council. So I applaud you in that. One aside comment, the gas station that's proposed, is it a Chevron?
No, it's Vaughn's.
Well, isn't,
Vaughn's supplies the gas.
oh, really?
Yeah, so this will be Vaughn's gas.
Oh, because
They
other
may
places
buy
I've
it from-
seen.
They may buy it from Chevron. I don't know where they get it.
Oh,
but
okay.
They brand it Vaughn's.
Well, there's a, if you've ever ridden to Bishop, up in the East Sierras, there's a big Vaughn's there, and there's a gas station, and it's a Vaughn's gas station, but it's a Chevron station. I was just curious if that same arrangement was going to be working here as it does there. And by my own experience, it works fine. It's away from the building, plenty of access. The main drive goes right by the gas station into the parking area for the grocery store. And then you can either get gas going in or spend a lot of money in the store and go gas when you get out and get more credit. So
Right.
it works. Okay. I think that's my comments for now, but I appreciate you being here today and spending some time with us and explaining a bit of the history of the project and what you foresee coming in the future as an enhancement for the city of Camarillo. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes, thank you. Looking at the elevation of the frontage of the main round of buildings, I'm looking at a major 1 and a major 2. And is major 2 the current CVS?
Yes.
Okay, that's the current CVS. And is there an interested tenant in major 1, or would this, so the size of major 1 looks similar to major 2, so would that be, what type of business would you envision for that?
Well, that's a really good question. I ask our leasing staff that all the time. We have had discussions with there's different tenants that would take that size, and there are also smaller tenants that would take a breakdown of that. It's almost 40,000, there's 38, almost 39,000 feet. So we have looked at potentially breaking that into 2 spaces, a 15,000 foot and a 20,000 foot or a 25,000 foot. And it could be as something as similar, just up the street, Ross just went into the shopping center that's just up on the corner. And that's the type of a user that you typically have seen out at the freeways. We have one at the Camarillo Town Center, and sometimes they're going in to try to, they really want to sell more goods, and so they'll get closer to their customers. And so we would look at those kind of soft goods as a potential tenant. There could be a potential fitness use. There could be a number of other uses. There won't be drug, because CVS has an exclusive on drugs, and there won't be grocery, because the Vaughn's has an exclusive on grocery. It won't be coffee, as long as Coffee Bean is there. So we're really looking long and hard for good tenants that we could put in there.
That's great. Thank you.
So, of course, you've heard a lot of discussion about the traffic matter. So I want to know, do you have a feeling one way or the other, whether you think a signal at that main entry off of Arneal would be helpful to the project, a hindrance to the project, or no opinion either way?
So I think I feel badly. I think we created this problem because we heard from the neighbors about the squealing tires and the brakes and the accidents there, and so we said we need to study that and responsive to community input. The traffic engineer is correct. There are a lot of ways to go out of the center other than that area. And typically what happens, I think they're correct in their analysis, typically what happens is if it's a wait there, people will go and use another right turn to get out. And so, although it could go there, and we did study, to Commissioner Murphy's comment, we did study a dedicated right-out lane and a left-out lane if there were a signal there. But there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of exits in the center, there's a lot of ways to go where you want to go, so people wouldn't wait in line. So actually, we're supporting the city staff's determination, but if there's a follow-on study at some point that shows a need for it, these additional warrants, it could happen in the future, we don't know. We wouldn't be opposed to that either.
Okay. The Vaughn's Fuel Mart, like, which there's several of them now, I think, throughout the state, right?
Yes.
So what has been the experience in terms of the traffic into them? Are they like Costco, you know, very popular, sometimes get very busy with lines and so forth because of the discounted fuel
Right.
costs?
They don't discount like Costco does. I've
Yeah.
seen those Costco centers where they steeply discount. Here you might get 4 cents off, but you're using your Vaughn's ID. And so largely Vaughan sees this as a way to sell more groceries, where it gets its customers who are going to get gas to get the grocery, or who are going to get their groceries, get their gas, and then use their grocery credits or their grocery discounts later. So I think they really see it as a synergistic way for them to sell more groceries.
Okay.
And I haven't seen any of the Vaughn's fuel be discounted significantly like you see where you get big lines, people chasing that because they're selling groceries, not gas, and so they're really looking to maximize their use of that synergy.
And are the store hours limited as to the closing time in the evening, or are they 24-hour?
The mart itself will be a 5 a.m. to 11, and the pumps will be available all night, but there is a condition of approval that there be a dimming feature on the canopy lights so that it's not glaring all night.
So you can fuel up any time of the day, 24 hours a day?
Yes.
At these stations?
Yes.
As long as you get a credit card or something?
Right.
Oh, interesting, okay. Now, how would you envision, I think we discussed what the plan is for fuel tankers coming in and refueling the underground tanks. What is supposed to be the flow pattern there?
The flow pattern there would be in this driveway. The tanks are right here. So it'd be in this driveway, along here, and out this driveway.
So would it be expected to be making a right, going north on Arneal and not cutting across?
If they use that right, they're probably going to go around and go through the back here. Yeah, because they can't, it's a big vehicle, they can't
Right.
make a U-turn. They could conceivably come here, 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 and go out and get into those 2 left turn lanes right there. So that's also possible. And if they're fueling in the morning before the center is very busy, that would, be an alternative route.
Yeah, nothing would stop them from even trying to cut across the median to go south on Arneal, coming out that main entryway there, right?
Yeah, this would be a pretty tight turn for a big trailer truck.
So that wouldn't really be feasible for them,
I
so,
don't think they could come out here and go left. I don't think so. I'm not an expert in those turning radiuses,
Yeah.
but I think that's a pretty tight turn
okay.
to S out like that.
But it hasn't really been studied as to how that,
No.
basically that process might work with a tanker activity.
No, that's, again, this is going to be a ground lease to Vaughn's. And so Vaughn's handles that part of the operations. And so they're going to really direct how they want their, did I do that?
Oops.
I'm not sure what happened. Anyway, Vaughn's will really direct the tanker trips.
Okay. All right. I think that's all we have. Questions for the applicant at this time?
I just have a couple more questions.
Yes.
So if the service station stays there next to Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, so there'll be more cars driving around, and the fuel, and possibly when the tankers come in to fill, would you consider putting up like a garden wall on that north side of the patio area next to Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf?
Oh,
to kind
absolutely.
of shield it from the
Yep.
gas?
Yeah, absolutely.
When, so when people are going out there and just kind of relaxing and stuff, they have a little bit of a break
Right,
from,
no, that, I think you're right along here, that would be an easy fix. We actually are doing a screen wall like this right along our new walkway here, where we have a screen wall that'll be planted out, that'll separate that little loading area from the traffic area. It would be quite easy to put a screen wall on the north side of that coffee bean patio, just to create a better environment for those users.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think that would be a big help for that.
Yep.
And as far as if they find that they don't need all of that parking area in front of Vons, could they sometime in the future, that part, think about an additional restaurant or something at that end of the parking lot?
I would like to say so, but Vons would have the right to approve anything in that parking field.
Okay,
Yeah, so I think, again, this grocery business is evolving with delivery, with the pickup,
Right.
with all of those options. And we do know that in almost all of our shopping centers, the nether reaches, as you might say, out here, people are not really parking there except for on the day before Christmas or Thanksgiving, the really big grocery shopping days. But it would be a stretch of my imagination to think Vons would say, good idea, take part of our parking. They just don't like to do that.
so that whole parking lot then isn't part of their lease?
Yes, this whole area is all controlled by Vons, and so we wouldn't make any changes there without Vons' approval. Now, having said that, as time evolves, we're seeing at our Camarillo Town Center project, Target has a big parking field in the middle there, and they're now talking to us occasionally about, well, can we do something with the backside of our parking field because we don't use it?
Right,
And so, but that's, that was built in 97, 98, so that's, 25 years old. Could it happen here? Possibly, but it really would take Vons to be willing to do that because they right now really want to make sure they have enough parking for all their
Right.
grocery customers.
and I do know currently when there's heavy shopping days, when the two of them are together, that's CVS and the Vons, that stretch of the parking lot is pretty full, or can
Yes.
be pretty full at times.
Yes, and this does get full, and so having like separation
that particular driveway. By closing it, you then, while there is now an option, people don't use it, you will simply force them off to use the alternative intersections or driveways that the staff has mentioned. We also understand the desire for a fast food restaurant from an economic standpoint for the developer. And we would ask that because of its location, it's going to be directly across from almost 12 of our homeowners with basically no screening other than a few trees. We'd ask that a minimum the developer be required to mitigate the lighting as to not spill over the property, ensure that the speakers are pointed away from association property, and to limit the operating hours to no more than 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 p.m. on the weekends. Might I have a little bit more time since I'm representing a group?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm really going to have to keep this to 3 minutes. Thank you very much for your comments, though. Next speaker will be A.J. Ahern.
He's a real estate guy. I'm A.J. Cool. Oh, A.J. Ahern. You are
That's a first.
Haven't had that one before.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, 3 minutes, go ahead.
Thank you for the time. As mentioned, I'm AJ Aaron. I'm a local commercial real estate agent. I know a lot of times with projects like this, most of the public comments are against certain facets. I'm mainly coming to speak in support of the project. Don't have any current tenants looking, but I'll call you if I do. But the big thing for me is, as has been mentioned before, it is a rather tired center. There was a public comment that got submitted via email saying that they were worried that we were going to turn into the valley. I think if we continue to fight against owners, especially ones that have been in the community 26 years, that are looking to invest money into centers, revamp them, and make them look even better, then we will look like the valley. But if we step back, realize that this will become, I mean, Las Postas Plaza has its pluses, but this would be the most beautiful center in the city if we let this move forward. And I think to block it would be a big mistake. Additionally, I would hope that the commission would take the time to look at the project overall and some of the impacts that have been brought up, especially tenant-specific impacts or concerns, I think would be a little short-sighted. There's a large chance that some of the tenants we're talking about won't be there 3 years from now, 5 years from now, by the time this is even finished. So I think giving additional speed bumps and hurdles based on some of those concerns would be a mistake. I think it would be the job of InvestTech to make changes to keep their tenants happy, to keep the shoppers happy, and everyone coming in to be good owners. I don't think we need to try to tell them how to do that. I think they have the responsibility to do so if they want to continue to be profitable in the center. I think the presence of the gas station is a major positive, and I think it's especially because it's a Vaughn's gas station, as has been mentioned, and will be a lot more dual use than if it was another operator or, God forbid, a super discount operator, like we've been brought up with Costco. You go there just for the gas. You go there just for the $7 car wash. I think you're going to get a lot of dual use between the Vaughn shoppers and the gas station goers. Additionally, as has been mentioned, I believe by Assistant Director Moe, there are 7 exits and entrances to this center, not including the rear that would be for employee areas and loading docks. At some point, we need to trust the citizens to be able to look around and find an easy way out. And I don't think there is a quote-unquote main entrance to this center with the anchors being spread so widely amongst the different corners of the center. I think you'll have a lot of people using numerous entrances to the space. But overall, I support the project and hope you move it forward as is currently set up. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. A.J. Cole, you're up.
A.J. Cool, resident of Camarillo. Also, out of full disclosure, I was with Coffee Bean for 7 years and did the leases over there. And For the last year, I've been with Subway, so I have different ways here. But when I say we, I only speak of we in the sense of me and my beautiful wife here. So it's rare that you see a redevelopment like this where the developer actually takes 20% of their footprint and they lose it. So that's pretty impressive. It's a beautiful project. I would like to comment on the main entrance. It shows, currently it's a hard curb both sides, and they're showing it with a cut right as you come in, which would allow like you to go in really quick to go into the coffee bean or to the gas. I think that's going to be a pinch point and a problem in the future because you'll get people coming in trying to make that, and they'll be in conflict with people trying to get out right there, so you might want to revisit that. With regards to the turn signal, so right now, I'm a resident in the north, so I have no ingress egress issues, but if you live over by Temple off Ponderosa, your only ways to get back there are either making a left out of that driveway or going to Ponderosa up, taking a left to Pickwick, working your way back around. So it is a problem that has to be mitigated. I think AJ Ahern made a good point too, that now with the separation of the tenants, you're going to get a lot of that movement in the parking over on the north side of the shopping center. So that could help a little bit with that main entrance for the people going north. But to get those people back to the east on Ponderosa, it's, maybe there might be a consideration of a light at Fiesta. Maybe that's where that goes to help, get that space right. Or maybe a U-turn at Arneal and Ponderosa. Those are possibilities for that. So, but it's a good project. You're going to be dealing with it for a while because they don't have it all together. There's tenants, Coffee Bean's lease is not long, and CVS only has a few years. You got to figure out, so you're going to be revisiting it soon. But the drive-through stacking right there won't accommodate, obviously like a Chick-fil-A or something like that. But you'll probably be revisiting this project whenever that tenant is found. So a couple times you're going to come back to this project. But thank you for the consideration on this. Have a good night.
Thank you for your comments. Now, those are all the speaker cards I have. Is there any other member of the public that wants to speak to this at this time? Seeing none, no other speaker cards, then would the applicant like to say anything in response to the public comments that were made?
Commissioner Espinoza, thanks for the opportunity. The only thing I'd like to comment on is there is a suggestion by Mike Hauser that potentially the entrance that we've been discussing here be converted to either an entrance only or a right out. We would not support that kind of a thing. It just has too many ripple effects in the traffic patterns for the center. Other than that, I think we had some good support and some good ideas, and we're looking forward to moving forward the project. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, we will close the public comment, and if we could get a report from the Architectural Review Committee.
I guess more of a somewhat of a procedural question. We've had a number of comments come up specifically from the commission that may or may not affect conditions on the permit. There was, in the discussion, there was talk about whether we approve the gas station or not. And I don't know that we're separating things to say, okay, I like this piece, but I don't like that piece. So I don't think we're talking about that. Commissioner Vandermeulen talked about a screen wall on the Coffee Bean, and then there was also a comment about lighting for the drive-through restaurant. Would these be items that should be in the conditions now, or are they something that would be under review and approval by the director on his review as things go on? In other words, something that wouldn't come back to the Planning Commission. And where I'm going with this is to make sure that the resolutions that we, assuming we adopt them tonight, are all-inclusive, or do they need amendment, or are these things identified somewhere so that when the time comes for the director's approval on some of these items, that they are in fact acknowledged?
Yeah, so the resolutions are written correctly to address your concerns. There's actually a condition of approval 174 that addresses all exterior light fixtures be approved by the community development director and directed down, and so they don't glare. We don't have the light pollution spilling over into, off the site. And then to address the gardening wall, that can be done at the staff level, so it would not need to be brought back to the planning commission. We do that through what's called a permit adjustment under our modification ordinance.
So the screen wall and the lighting can be something that's addressed down the road, does not have to be part of the resolution now?
Well, the lighting itself is already addressed through conditions of approval. So that they'll need to, submit a lighting plan showing that there's no light spilling off the site. And then we're also going to be looking at the exterior light fixtures to make sure that they're pointed down or shielded for glare.
So what you're
that's
saying
already
is that's
addressed
already part of the conditions of approval?
Exactly.
Okay, I just
And
want to
then
make sure.
If the garden wall is desired, after the fact, that's something that we can do very simply over the counter at the director level.
Yeah, I just, I don't want to have us going away thinking one thing and then something else is in fact the case, so I want to make sure that we're okay. Is it time for my comments on how I feel about things?
No, not at this time. We're still with the architectural review report.
Okay. When do you want the architectural committee report?
That's where we're
Right
at,
now?
yes.
Okay, well, I still have the floor, thank you. The architectural committee convened and conducted their meeting, and we had a discussion with the applicant and the architect and a number of other people, and we reviewed the various diagrams as you see up here. And in general, we were, I think, very impressed with the work that we've taken kind of a crummy-looking facade that exists today and made it very nice. There's a lot of articulation in the buildings. There's use of some arches. There's use of good materials. The color palette is excellent. So we thought that a fine job was done by the applicant, and we approved the plans as submitted. Commissioner Edsel, I don't know if you have any more to add.
I concur with that. We thought it was very well done and a very welcome upgrade for that center.
Okay, very good, thank you. So now we come to commissioner comments on the project, overall project.
I get to go again? Here we go.
Floor is yours.
Overall, I'm very favorably impressed with this project of taking an existing shopping center that has seen many better days. There are a number of vacancies there, but there's some very viable businesses, a couple of restaurants that I personally enjoy, and I'm glad to hear that they're going to continue to be used. And so I like that there's a plan for accommodating the existing residents, that there's an idea in mind that we're going to try to keep those that are there viable and running, and in some cases, they may have to move, but that's okay. Overall, the project itself has had a history of mixed-use proposals, and I think the developer has been very responsive to their own public outreach efforts and responding positively to the comments that were received from the public, local neighbors, et cetera. And I think what came out of it is a very positive project, and I think stands as a good example of a shopping center for Camarillo. The developer has shown a very significant willingness to work with the city and take on the concerns of the citizens. We are in full compliance with the codes and guidelines that govern various architectural elements, the ingress, egress, and all of the things that are required. The 87 pages of conditions that go along with the project, I'm being facetious, but there are a lot of conditions on the project, and they're all there for good reasons. I like very much the landscape enhancement. I did not see until tonight the landscaping plans, but I'm very encouraged by that, by seeing a large number of trees being planted to help not only shade the parking area, but also, I think, soften it, and it'll be a much nicer place to look. Case in point, I don't know how many people drive by the Catholic Church up on the hill, just above the seminary. When it first went in, all you saw was the parking lot and a couple little stubs of trees. And you go by it now a few years later, and it's quite magnificent. Trees have grown in well, and it's a very, very good-looking project. So I think the same kind of thing can happen here. The buildings are visually attractive. You don't have a feeling of just one long mass wall and a bunch of little cubby holes where a business may or may not be. You've got a lot of articulation in the architecture, different colors used, I think an excellent palette of materials and colors, and a good change in the facade as you look across. Some have arches, some have covered areas, but you've got a whole new front to all the buildings, and it's covered because in the event, should it rain, heaven forbid, I hope it does, you can get from one store to another and not have to walk in the rain. You may have to use your umbrella to get from your car to the stores, but that's okay. And the whole idea of the southwest corner of Arneal and Ponderosa, of making that more a public space for gatherings, and now building that little alleyway that's a nothing right now. I didn't even know it was there. But making that a place where people can walk through and go, and then they have a destination point right at the corner. It's a very nice statement. And the idea of public art with sculpture, I think, is outstanding. It's the kind of thing we need more of. You see it in Old Town in a couple of places. And little by little, public art is coming back in, and I think it's important that we do so, not only for the heritage of the Camarillo area by picking up some of the things that are notable, the eucalyptus-lined 101, the St. Mary Magdalene church steeple, et cetera, those kinds of things. That's a legacy and that's a history that I think it's important for us to keep. And that's being echoed here with the public art. So overall, I have a very positive feeling about this project, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Murphy?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this center has been in need of major makeover for a good 15 to 20 years, and we've heard from the architectural committee that it is a sensibly done makeover, and it will be very attractive in comparison with what we see out there now. I really like the idea of cutting back on paving, giving up 4% of the parking when there will be less business there, and it will also come at the addition of landscaping, and there's the whole center is sorely in need of additional landscaping, including trees. Vaughn's is very popular here in town, and because of that, with the space they have now, it's very crowded from time to time. And so adding 35-40% to what is there now makes a lot of sense to me as well. The public art, I felt, was very impressive. We've reviewed a few of these at this stage before, and usually we're looking at sort of a tiny picture or pictorial on one of the graphics, and that looks decent. But tonight, a presentation was made that described the public art in great detail, and that came from a local entity, which is Studio Channel Islands, so I appreciated that as well. All that considered, it's easy for me to support this project.
Thank you, Commissioner Murphy. Commissioner Edsel?
Yeah, I'm in favor of the project. Also, I think it's a very welcome upgrade and update of the center. The applicant, everything's zoned for the use now, and they're full of the conditions that satisfies me that anything that needs to be mitigated is being taken care of. And then, also I kind of like the gas station idea that for years there were 2 more stations that were lost in that part of town, one up where the Starbucks is on Las Posas and Arneal, and then the 76th station. And so I think there's, a need for that, and having Vaughn's run it is kind of nice too. It's not a discount center where it's going to create an issue that I think. And also I was impressed at the new space on the corner there of Arneal, where they're having public art and opening those existing tenants. They have the entrance at the back end too, where that alley area is going to be kind of a destination hangout place. So I think the center's going to be great, needed in town. And the other thing I really appreciated is the developer spent time with the neighborhood and really tried to get consensus on what it is. So I strongly support the project.
Thank you. Vice Chair Vanderbilt?
The change is needed, and it is wonderful looking. And I can remember back before Mission Oaks and when Leisure Village was built, you went to the grocery store, either the little tiny one outside of Leisure Village, or you came over here to go shopping. Yeah, there wasn't anything else, and it's been here that long, and it looks like it's been here that long. So the revitalization is really needed and well done. I do still have a couple little hesitance here. One of the things that I think that, let me see the name here, Mr. Hauser, I believe when he was talking about time of day, I think what I heard was the gas station maybe only staying open till 11, rather than just the lights. Is that correct? Yes. And I kind of agree with that, having the gas station open all night without the mart open all night. If something goes wrong with any of the pumps or anything, people would have to go up to Vaughn's and check or see what's going on. So I think there's some legitimacy to that request as far as having the gas station close at the same time the mart closes at night. And then I did see on the little, if you go in the main drive where it shows that you can turn left towards the existing Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, that could be a little bit of an issue, although you're having to go through the gas station parking lot the other way to get to Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. So maybe just double check that that's going to work okay, or does that need to be closed off also, like the one where you can now go into that main driveway and turn right. You're closing that off for the drive-through for the restaurant to the right. So those are the two things that I would kind of like you, the developer, to work with Vaughn's or whoever, kind of address those issues to make sure that they still work well with everybody and with the neighbors. I do appreciate that the developer has worked so much with the neighborhood. Obviously, my idea of moving the gas station over isn't the right one to do, so it'll stay where it is. I am familiar with the grocery store gas stations from over in Phoenix going back and forth. And I love the idea, that they're there. They're usually pretty well priced. I don't know if they're going to be able to do the same pricing here as they do over in Phoenix, but we'll see. But yeah, other than, after listening to all the explanations, and just those two things, and also make sure it's safe to walk to 31 Flavors, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful change. It's really looks nice. It's going to add a lot more usability to the area, and it's just way better. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So I want to just say first off that one of the reasons I raised so many questions about the access into the shopping center is because I'm afraid, looking at the project, I see the success of it. And it's quite a transformation of that shopping center that's being proposed. And I think they've done a wonderful job. The architecture is outstanding. The paseo that they're proposing on the corner of Pickwick, Ponderosa and Arneal is a great enhancement and will be a great inviting site for people into the center. But as I said before, I think that, and it's been discussed a lot, hopefully the staff has taken note of, the site access is my main concern about, do we have that well thought out to the full, because I think there was still even some questions about the tankers coming in, refueling and leaving. How is that actually going to take place? How is that not going to create a problem? How are we going to deal with pinch points that a member of the public mentioned, which is a good point, on people coming out the main entrance. So I think that's something that really just, I hope that we can address, as this project moves forward, because it is definitely something that would be a revitalization in a big way. And, the Fuel Mart and convenience store, while it may not be the, everyone's idea of what you should be looking at from a street view for a commercial project, it's still, zoned properly to accommodate that, the commercial plan development. It meets all the requirements for setbacks, for building height, and I really, hope that they take all comments into consideration and move forward, and I wish the project the best of success going forward. So with that,
Call for resolution?
we want to call for resolutions. Actually, if we want to read those one at a time.
Yeah, so before us tonight, we have two resolutions. We'll take the mitigated negative declaration first, and then we'll take the resolution for the CPD permit. So resolution number PC 2022-03, resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo approving and adopting mitigated negative declaration 2020-7 for CPD 6M23.
Move to waive further reading and vote to adopt.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Murphy. Wait for the reading, seconded by Vice Chair Vandermeulen. Please vote. That passes 5-0 unanimously, and that was for the MND. Now, if we want to move on to the next resolution.
Yes, the second resolution before the Commission tonight is resolution number PC 2022-04, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo approving a request by Sphere Investments LLC for a modification to CPD-6 to demolish the former 111,850 square foot Kmart building and construction of a new 63,642 square foot supermarket, a new 3,000 square foot convenience store and gas station, a new 3,500 square foot drive-through building, a new 3,500 square foot retail building, and facade remodel of the existing buildings in the CPD zone, further described and set forth as CPD-6M23.
I'll make a motion to waive further reading and vote for adoption.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Edsel, seconded by Commissioner Talmadge. The CPD? And that passes 5-0. Thank you very much. All right. So do we have anything on director's report?
The only thing I'd like to bring to the Planning Commission's attention is that we do, our next two meetings, it looks like that we're going to be having a meeting on March 1st. It's a regular scheduled meeting. But then our next meeting will be April 5th.
Okay.
April 5th? So nothing in March, April 5th?
We'll have one meeting on March 1st.
Okay,
Yep.
got it.
And then April 5th.
All right, got it.
Oh, is that all? On director's report? Anything further?
That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner comments?
I was going to thank everybody for showing up tonight, and they all left. Oh, well.
Okay, seeing none, then we declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.